Welcome to Microsoft Build and the Ask the Expert session on Microsoft certifications. My name is Nancy Tandy and I will be your host for this session. This session is intended to be an interactive experience for you, so you can ask your questions related to Microsoft certifications from our experts. If you want to ask a question, please use the Q&A box to ask the question, and we will try to answer as many as possible. For questions that do not get addressed verbally during our session, we have a great team of experts behind the scenes working very hard to try to answer all of the questions, as many as possible. So first, we'd like to start with some introductions. Let's start with Liberty. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I am Liberty Munson. I am the psychometrician on our certification program. That's really just a fancy way of saying I'm responsible for ensuring that whatever tool or process we use to evaluate skills is valid and reliable. So if you have any questions about certifications or exams, I'm the person who knows the answer.
Thanks, Liberty. And Stephen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jensen. I've been at Microsoft now going on 12 years. I've been within Worldwide Learning now for 4.5 years, and I currently manage the Credentialing product management team. So we are the team, along with Liberty, that manages the certification product experiences.
Thanks, Stephen. Now, before we start the Q&A, I wanted to let our audience know about our newest certifications in market. You can find these on Microsoft Learn. So we have several new certifications. The first one is the Power Automate RPA Developer Associate. We have a new Cybersecurity Architect Expert. We have Exchange Online Support Engineering Specialty Certification. We also have an Azure Support Engineer for Connectivity Specialty Certification. And finally, we have a new Azure Enterprise Data Analyst Associate Certification. So again, for more information, you can check out our blog with the link below, or you can go to Microsoft Learn. Oops. All right, so let's get started on some questions. I have a question for Stephen first. Stephen, what is the difference between fundamentals, role-based, and specialty certifications?
All right, thank you for that question. So as you just called out, we do have 3 certification types. We have the fundamentals, we have the role-based, and we have specialty. Fundamentals is really, as the name implies, intended to focus on the basic foundational elements of, our technologies and services. So think of it as somebody who hasn't had experience working with Azure or M365, and they want to understand some of the basic constructs and foundational elements. Then the fundamentals exam helps focus on those. We also have those role-based certifications that really focus in on those in-demand roles where folks are using our technologies to help their customers be successful. So you'll see some of those here. The associate and expert level certifications are sub-levels within our role-based certifications. And then we have the specialty certs. You see a couple here as well, the Exchange Online Support Engineer Specialty, the Azure Support Engineer for Connectivity Specialty. Those really dive into a specific focus area around either specific technology, industry solution. In some cases, they're even third party. We have an SAP focused specialty certification. Those are really focused on a specific technology or industry solution.
Thanks, Stephen. And I do have a question for Liberty. Liberty, what's the value of role-based certifications?
Well, when we reimagined the program in 2018, we really recognized that the technology is constantly evolving and it's becoming and it's moving pretty quickly. And so what we decided to do to help people be successful in these cloud-based job roles was to really focus on this idea of a role-based certification. What we have done is we've aligned them to in-demand jobs and based them on core skills that are really important to be successful in that technology, in that job role. And these core job roles that we've identified have been been identified by industry and subject matter experts, and they have helped us identify the skills that really are required to be successful. So at the end of the day, what these role-based certifications do is they validate your knowledge and ability to perform in one of these critical job roles that we know organizations need to be successful in navigating what they can do and how they can benefit from many of the cloud-based technologies that Microsoft offers.
Thanks, Liberty. And I do have a follow-up question for you. Since we're at Build and there's lots of developers at Build, should developers care about Microsoft certifications?
So this is a great question because my husband is a developer and we have this conversation all the time. Just with technology moving so quickly, certification is really one way you can demonstrate that you have the skills that you need to be successful, even in developer roles. But in addition, certification allows you to show that you're staying up to date as technologies change and things like that. So my husband and I debate this all the time, and I would argue certification is just as important for the developer audience as it is for the IT pro audience, because you are also working in the space where technology is changing at a rapid pace. So how do you show that you are keeping up to date, that you have the skills and abilities? Certification is the perfect way to do that.
Great answer. Thank you. Stephen, I have the next question for you. Why did Microsoft introduce the certification renewal process?
Great. Thanks, Nancy. It's really something we're super excited about. And it builds off of what Liberty was saying, that just with the pace of change in the cloud-based world, just the pace of change in terms of new innovations and these constantly evolving services, obviously then the knock on there is that the skills need to, continually are evolving and changing. And this notion of staying current, staying up to date, staying sort of future ready is really, really important, right? So what we did was two different changes. One was we introduced the 1-year expiry for our certifications, so that, it reflects just the ever-changing nature and the need to stay current. And so the cool thing is then we introduced this notion of the certification renewal experience to make it really straightforward, really convenient for people to do that, to stay current with their skills. And so we've collected thinking about the actual training experience, we've created collections on Learn where you can study up on what the latest innovations are, latest changes, and then we have a very straightforward assessment that you can take that's doesn't require you to take an exam through Pearson VUE. It's much shorter. It allows you to do it at your convenience. It's at no charge, and so it really assesses your skills on what those changes are, and it allows you to stay current in your skills.
Great. And Stephen, this is a follow-up question for you on that. What happens if someone doesn't renew their certification before the expiration date?
So one, you will get reminders. So hopefully it's a case where that doesn't happen, right? Because we're sending you reminders, we send 4 reminders, 180 days and 90 days, 30 days and a week. So hopefully you're getting those reminders to come back and study the material and then take that really straightforward assessment. But if it does happen that for whatever reason you've let your certification expire, then the action we would hope that you would take is to either find a different certification that's relevant for your particular situation, or become recertified if your certification has expired.
Great. And just remind the audience, where do you go to check for certifications that are available for you to renew? I think you said it, but let's just remind everyone.
Absolutely. So again, if going back to Learn, hopefully people are coming back to Learn to look at their transcript and their profile. You'll get notifications, and also the email reminders will point you there. You'll get notifications for what the status is for your certifications. You'll see notifications for which ones are eligible for renewal, and then you can take action on that to review the content and then take that assessment, as I've mentioned.
Right.
Nancy,
Thanks,
can I actually clarify one point that Stephen made, because I want to just make sure this is super clear. If you let your certification expire, you have the choice of maybe there's a better certification and something else that you should be exploring, which is totally fine. But if you want that certification again, you actually have to re-earn it, which means you have to take and pass all of the associated exams that are required. So my advice is don't let it expire if you want to keep it.
Great. And I think there's a follow-up question here for you, Liberty. If someone has multiple certifications expiring around the same time, do you have a good recommendation for them how they should think about renewing them?
So the great thing about the renewal process is that we've given you a window of time that you are eligible to renew any of your certifications. So my advice is that you start early and you plan based on when each of those certifications are going to expire. So don't wait to the last minute to renew a certification. You have 6 months before it's going to expire. So plan your time and base it on when, start with the one that's going to expire first and work on that one. And if for some reason you're struggling with that, maybe you need to take a step back and you can focus on the next one that's going to expire. But we have given you 6 months. I would say just start early and make a plan, and you'll get through it.
Great. Thank you.
If I can just add to that, Nancy, just building on that, you can tell we're excited about it, right? This is a great experience that we've introduced. The actual time commitment is certainly much less than it is to take that initial certification and study and then take the exam, and both elements, the study as well as the exam. So the content is really focused around what's changed, as is the assessment. So the time investment to renew is much shorter. Great,
thank you. So I have a question from the audience, and it deals a little bit with beta, so I'll give this to Liberty. Liberty, can you suggest on how to prepare for DP500 exam as it has no learning path associated with it?
So let me up-level this a little bit and let me tell you how you should think about preparing for any beta exam. So sometimes we do have learning paths available, and if there isn't one for DP500, my guess is it should be coming pretty soon because we are committed to having some learning content available at the same time that we release to beta. But we release betas early and sometimes that's not possible. So how should you think about preparing for a beta exam when there isn't an explicit learning path? So some ideas, my biggest recommendation is go to the skills measured list and ask yourself, be honest with yourself. Can I do this? Can I do this? And if you can't, I would say start looking at other places on Learn because the odds are the content is there somewhere. It just hasn't been collated into a learning path. So just do some searches, see if you can find anything, especially in docs. You'll probably find some good starting points to think about how that skill is represented within the technology and within the job role. Also, ask people who are in the job role already and ask them for advice on how you might prepare to learn a particular skill that you don't have that's going to be measured on the exam. So those are really focusing on the skills measured and being honest with yourself about where your strengths and weaknesses are, and then finding the resources that can help you better understand how that skill actually manifests itself in the job role and what kinds of challenges and problems you might encounter that would leverage those skills.
Great answer. Thank you. Stephen, I'm going to give this to you, but if Liberty may have to jump in too as well. How often are certification exams being updated, and is there a roadmap available for the public?
I will start, and then Liberty will certainly jump in with more details. So I mean, it's one of those cases we're just sort of building on the theme of the technology is constantly evolving, right? And so we're often going back and looking at those, reviewing those objective domains, reviewing the exams. We look at them on a every 2 to 3 month basis just to make sure that they're staying current, that the content is staying relevant. And so that is absolutely part of our normal process. And then we're also then looking at the JTAs on a regular basis. That is done on an annual basis, where we look at the JTAs for those role-based certifications to make sure that those roles and the things that we've covered within those roles and integrated in those roles are staying relevant for those roles as well.
So how do you know when an exam is going to change? We do keep the exam details pages up to date. So as soon as we know what if an exam is going to change, we will post it on that exam details page. It's also listed, if you download the skills measured document, it'll also be listed there, and it will show you exactly what's changing. So when we're announcing a change, what you'll see in that skills measured document is the very first is here's the OD as it exists today, that skills measured list as it exists today. And then there will be a table saying here's what's changing and when it's going to change. And then you'll see an example of what the skills measured list will be after we implement that change. So we try to notify at least 30 days in advance. That's our goal. Sometimes we actually can provide more notice, but that's kind of the way we think about it. Is about every quarter, we're reviewing the exam OD, the objective domain, that skills measured list, and we're making small but incremental changes to reflect the technologies, the changes in the job role as the technology changes. And then that JTA, or the job task analysis, we review that annually. And that's where things are, where bigger changes are likely to happen. Because that's where we really go back and we revisit the entire job role and we ask ourselves, are these still the right skills for this job role? And then we can potentially introduce some bigger changes as the result of that refresh. But we are committed to making sure that these exams reflect what you need to be successful in these critical job roles within organizations.
Thanks, Liberty. That was great. So I do have a follow-up for you, Liberty, on an earlier one. Does the learning path cover everything towards the certifying exam? So for example, AI 900 for the Azure Fundamentals AI one, does the learning path cover everything they need to know, or do they need to do additional work?
Great question. So with the fundamentals in particular, the learning path really does cover everything that you need to know for the certification exam, and probably at the depth that you need to really understand it in order to feel prepared. So if you spend some time with that learning path, you're probably going to be in a pretty good position to sit the exam and probably do pretty well. I'm not going to promise you pass. I'm a psychometrician. I make no promises. But with the role-based, the story is a little bit different. All of the skills will be covered in the learning path, but the learning path is intended to give you kind of that foundational I'm going to loosely use that word, not to conflate that with fundamentals, but kind of give you the basics of what you need to be successful in this job role. But by design, our role-based and specialty certifications are intended to have you solve real problems that you would encounter if you were actually in that job role. So the training and the learning path is a great starting point, but you really need to have experience so you can understand really how this job role functions with the technology and how these pieces come together to solve real world problems, because that's what you're going to experience on the certification exam. So my mantra when it comes to this is get trained, get experience, get certified. That's the best way to set yourself up for success for our certification exams.
Great. So
I can attest. Sorry,
go ahead.
real quickly. I can attest on the fundamentals piece, Liberty. When I passed the AZ 900 exam, I used the learning path exclusively, and I was able to pass. So it can be done. If I can do it, others can do it for sure.
That's great, Stephen. Thanks. So this is an interesting question, and I think Liberty, I'm going to send it to you. The question is, has testing been improved? I remember going to a class for MSD and certification, and the line that made me give up in all certification was, in real life, you do this, but during your test, you should do that. Has that been improved?
I would say yes. What's interesting with our exams is we hire external subject matter experts who are in these job roles using our technologies, and they're the ones that are helping us write the questions. But the trick is that we deliver our exams globally, and so while we try to represent what is primarily done in the job role, it's not outside the realm of possibility that you're going to be presented with an experience or a problem that you personally have not encountered on your job. And so I do sometimes hear people saying, well, this isn't real world, I don't do that. But you have to remember that although you personally may not have done that, others have, because our subject matter experts have identified these as real world problems that people in these job roles typically have to solve. So in addition, though, I know another common quote unquote complaint, we'll say, about some of the questions is that they're kind of worded in a difficult way, that they're tricky. So here's my piece of advice. And if you take nothing else away besides, cert renewal is awesome, from this conversation is we are not designing tricky questions. If somebody tells me a question is tricky, I actually want to double click on that and say, why do you think it is? So it's not uncommon for tricky to mean difficult, which is totally fine. We will manage, if we have a lot of difficult questions, we will manage that with how we set the cut score, and it's all good. But when it's tricky, if you think it's tricky, I encourage you to reread the question and stop reading so much into it. We give you all the information that you need to make the right inferences that you need to make in order to answer the question. So if you truly think, oh, this is Microsoft trying to trick me, please take a deep breath, reread the question, and remember, Liberty said, we are not trying to trick you. So what am I overthinking here, and what are they trying to get at? And you will find that we have probably gotten into a better place in the way we're wording the questions and structuring the questions, that yes, it may be difficult, but it should not be tricky.
That's great. Thanks. So Stephen, there's another question going back to renewals. Do all the Microsoft role-based certification have the option to renew?
So today we have 19 certifications have a renewal experience that will be increasing over time. So that's growing. So technically today, not every of those certs does, but will certainly in the future.
Great, thanks. And Liberty, we have a follow-up question to you on the getting experience to be certified. The question is slightly a comment too. It says sometimes it becomes a chicken and the egg situation. In my situation, we need to get we need to show a certification to get an opportunity to work in certain projects involving that technology. How do we manage this conundrum?
That is a really good observation. So when I say experience, it doesn't necessarily have to be on the job, although it could be. So here's some ideas I would encourage you to explore. In many cases, we have a way for you to access our technology through sandbox opportunities on Learn. So that might be one great way to get that experience. So yes, it's not you actually in the job role, but you have that list of skills measured. Think about how you might actually implement that skill and play around with the technology through some of the sandbox opportunities on Learn. If you are in an organization that actually has the technology, talk to people and ask them, say, hey, I'm preparing for this certification exam. Can you give me access to Azure or Dynamics 365 or whatever the technology is? And people, hopefully in your organization, people will recognize that you need that kind of sandbox experience within your own organization. So that might be another opportunity and a way to explore how to get that experience. So just keep in mind, it's great to get the experience in the job role. Don't get me wrong, that's going to be that's kind of the #1 place to go. But just because you're not in the job role doesn't mean that you can't get access to the technology in other ways to play around with it, to start understanding some of the nuances of how the technologies work in relationship to the job. And and plus, when you actually play with it, you learn better, right? We know that a lot of learning is through experience, and so we can give you all this reading material and videos to watch, but until you actually do it, sometimes that stuff just doesn't click in your brain. And so take advantage of any of the sandbox opportunities, either through Learn or your organization, or maybe even some of the learning partners can set you up with something that would work.
Great answer, Liberty. Stephen, I have a follow-up question to you on certification renewal. What happens if you fail a renewal? Do you get another chance to try again?
Yes, indeed. So a suggestion there would be to go back and make sure that you're reviewing the content that we've collected that's highlighting those changes in the technology, and absolutely you definitely get the opportunity to retake the assessment.
Great. I think this could go to either one of you, so I'll let you guys jump on this one. Does Microsoft plan to prepare a map with certified professionals to share with partners and clients and give professionals more visibility?
A map. Oh, go ahead, Liberty, if you're gonna.
So I think what they mean is like some sort of directory of people who are certified.
Yeah, and I'm thinking maybe they're thinking about like LinkedIn skills, maybe.
Got it. So definitely, that's a great question, and it's an area that we're thinking really hard about. I think there's definitely a desire to connect people with one another. We sort of think about it as networking folks together who have either have certifications in common or goals in common, ultimately leading them to opportunities as well. So this idea of community and building a community of folks who have earned a certification is super important to us, and further even pushing that to what can we do to connect people with opportunities if that is their goal is also something we're thinking hard about as well.
That's great. So I have an interesting question too, and Stephen, this might be for you as well. With renewal not requiring us go in person to a testing center and it's online at Learn, are we considering offering other exams without, in that same type of format?
So today, to earn a certification, the experience that we have is to take the exam through Pearson VUE. We're always looking at innovating. I think we've learned a lot from the great experience for certification renewal. And as we think about how we want to evolve those experiences, that's an area that we're thinking really hard about right now. So I would say stay tuned.
Great. And I think we have just enough time to do one or two additional questions. Liberty, I know we touched just a little bit on the beta process. Can you explain a little bit more about the beta exams and that full process?
Absolutely. So one of the key ways we make sure that the exams are as good as they can possibly be is to put them through beta. So when it comes to creating a certification exam, we have external subject matter experts that we train in Microsoft's item writing styles. We have another set of experts that will review each of those items to make sure that they're in the best possible shape. But we actually even, what's interesting is that we don't know exactly, even with all these experts looking at these questions, how well the question is actually going to work in an exam experience. So that's why we put it through beta, is because I can collect all sorts of information about what's working and what's not in relationship to the questions by gathering that information during the beta process. So based on all of the feedback, we can figure out if an item is actually a good one. We can also figure out if something's not right with an item. So is it too easy? Is it too difficult? Is it unfairly penalizing people who are performing generally well on the exam? And then there's an opportunity for people to leave comments. And so we can pick up all sorts of interesting ways to improve the questions based on the combination of the data and the comments that you leave. And I, in fact, read every comment that is left on a beta exam so that I can get a good sense for what's working and what's not. And then we can work with subject matter experts to improve the item. And all of this then results in items we potentially fix, items we keep on the exam, and then items that we remove from the exam, which is why you don't get scored immediately on a beta exam, because we do know some items are going to be fixed, and to score you on an item that's been significantly fixed is not fair. And we do know that we're going to remove items, and again, scoring you on items that we remove is not fair. So we take all of that data, and this is probably the most important phase of exam development to ensure that the exam is as good as it can possibly be.
Great answer. And we might have time for just a really quick short one. I had one listener say, or one in the audience wants to know, they would like to take an easy certification that they could pass after the required hours of study. What do you recommend?
I'm not answering that question because I don't like the word easy.
I'm thinking it's a fundamental, like maybe they should start with fundamentals.
I agree. But I'm not saying they're easy.
They're not easy. They're not easy. It's a great place to start. Yes. Great.
All right. I think that's about all the time we have for questions. We appreciate all of you coming and joining us today and your time. Your feedback is important to us, so we're going to put this link for the eval in the window here for you. And then we also have a list of resources that are super important. So if you're interested in our Cloud Skills Challenge, we'll have a link in the window for that. You can, if you complete at least one challenge, you'll get a free Microsoft certification exam. So very exciting. So go, you can find all that in the Learning Zone or click on the link that we're putting in the chat. So Microsoft Learn, if you want to keep going, we have all year round access to more skills, content and training, and certification paths. So take a look at Microsoft Learn and get started on your first module today. And then again, our certification details, you can head over to Microsoft Learn and find out all the latest on each certification that you're interested in, and it'll give you information on how to get started. And thanks again for joining us.